Welcome to the Deep Dive. Have you ever felt that moment, like in an epic story where everything's just hitting a peak and then bam, the group just falls apart, scattered, vulnerable, and suddenly facing something even bigger, even scarier, all alone? Well, that's exactly where our heroes are today. We're doing a really comprehensive deep dive into the Two Towers, the massive second film in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We're picking up literally right after the Fellowship of the Ring ended. That shock dissolution of the group, Middle-earth basically on the edge of total war. So our mission here for this deep dive is to unpack the story, which gets really elaborate here. We'll look at the critical turning points, the big moments, and those deep themes that, well, they don't just connect the two halves of the story. They really make this film such a pivotal, transformative chapter of the whole saga. We'll dig into how individual choices, like even tiny acts of mercy, can just ripple out and affect whole kingdoms, and how heroism itself kind of gets redefined when you're staring down this overwhelming darkness. So get comfortable.
Because Middle-earth is about to get a lot darker. And yeah, a lot more complex.
And what's really fascinating right from the start is how the story just immediately branches out. It really shows you all the different sides of this looming conflict and the personal weight each character suddenly has to carry. The Fellowship, which was, this single hope, it's shattered. So each member is forced onto their own path, often desperate, often isolated. You've got Frodo and Sam on this lonely, increasingly grim quest towards Mount Doom. They're carrying this immense corrupting weight of the One Ring, meanwhile the others, scattered all across Middle-earth, each facing completely different immediate dangers. So it's not just about a broken team, it's actually a really smart way to tell the story. It shows a world just spiraling into massive war, where the personal struggles are totally tied to the fate of everyone. A split narrative just perfectly highlights the stakes, which are immediately getting higher for everyone involved, from hobbit to king.
That's such a key point, those individual burdens. They couldn't be heavier. And maybe nobody feels that more than Frodo and Sam, right? Their journey kicks off in that brutal, unforgiving landscape, Emyn Muil. The terrain itself feels almost as hostile as their mission. It's not just like climbing over rocks. It's a descent into something much more perilous, morally gray. Every single step forward is a fight against the land, sure, but also against that growing darkness from the ring inside. And as they're struggling through this wasteland, they pretty quickly figure out they're not alone. There's this creature. Gaunt, twisted, starts stalking them. Gollum. His first appearance, just scuttling through the rocks like some kind of spider. It's genuinely chilling. And his history with the ring, well, it's dark, tragic, really. He had it for centuries, and now he's just utterly consumed by this obsessive need, this drive to get it back. Is precious. It's that desperate hunger, like an addiction, that fuels his attack on them. It's frantic, almost animalistic. He's basically a walking, talking warning sign of what the ring does, what Frodo himself could become. And this immediately brings up a really deep question, doesn't it? Like, what does it actually mean when the person carrying the ring, the one most vulnerable to his power, shows compassion, especially to someone so completely wrecked by it? Frodo deciding to spare Gollum's life. That's a huge moment, defines his character, really. It's not just a random impulse. It comes from this deep pity, and maybe more importantly, this recognition that they share this burden. They're both ring bearers in a way. Frodo's already feeling that pull. He gets the torment Gollum's going through on some level. He sees it in him. And that act of mercy, it's so different from how anyone else would react. You'd expect fear, maybe disgust, wanting revenge even. It really sets Frodo apart. It highlights those qualities, maybe almost redemptive qualities, that make him the hope, fragile as it is, the qualities that maybe make him resistant in his own way to the Dark Lord. And then, in this twist, born out of Gollum's own desperation and, let's face it, manipulation, Gollum swears an oath on the precious itself to guide them into Mordor, which is a promise loaded with irony and distrust and just constant underlying danger.
Okay, yeah, this is where the whole Gollum thing gets really interesting, psychologically complex. As he's leading them through this incredibly dangerous terrain, you see this split personality playing out constantly. It's fascinating, but also deeply disturbing. You get these glimpses of who he used to be, Smeagol. That sort of quieter, almost childlike side that you can sometimes reason with. Seems capable of some kind of twisted loyalty. And then there's Gollum, the twisted, manipulative, really monstrous side, driven purely by the ring, capable of just awful cruelty and deceit. It's like watching someone walk a tightrope inside their own head. You can almost feel that internal battle, the way his very being is fractured. You see it in his body language, his face changing, and of course, that voice. That iconic guttural voice, the complexity of Gollum. He's not just a bad guy, he's a victim too. A betrayer, sure, but also kind of tragic, a constant reminder of what the ring ultimately does, how it corrupts, destroys your very identity. He's the long-term damage personified.
Exactly. It's that deep psychological mess that makes him so compelling, so memorable. And digging into that a bit more, Gollum isn't just showing the ring's power to corrupt, he embodies how chronic it is, how irreversible. His whole existence, it forces you to think about how even an act of mercy, like Frodo's, how that can become a new weakness, a kind of twisted hope that plays on compassion. It really hammers home how the ring ultimately wins against a person's will, even when Gollum doesn't physically have it anymore. As they get closer to Mordor, that ring's burden gets heavier for Frodo. Not just physically, but mentally, too. And you see him start to sympathize more with Gollum's pain, seeing this terrifying reflection of his own possible future. But this growing understanding, this almost dangerous empathy from Frodo, Sam sees right through it. Sam's grounded. Simple loyalty, common sense. He sees Gollum as the threat he is. He's fiercely protective of Frodo. That creates this constant tension between them on their lonely path. Who can you trust? What does mercy even mean when your soul's on the line?
And just when you think their journey can't get any more dangerous, they get captured by Gondorian soldiers. And not just any soldiers. They're led by Faramir, who, we find out pretty quickly, is Boromir's brother. Boromir from the Fellowship, who had that tragic fall against the Uruk-hai at the end of the last film. And there's this incredibly tense moment. Faramir initially wants to take the ring to Gondor. He sees it as this great weapon against Sauron, which sounds exactly like his brother's temptation, right? It feels like it could derail the whole quest right there.
Yeah, and connecting that to the bigger picture, Faramir's final choice is absolutely pivotal. It shows a different path, a more enlightened path than his brother took. Boromir, despite, his noble goals, he fell to the ring's temptation, wanted to use its power for Gondor. Faramir shows this incredible wisdom. He comes to understand the huge, insidious danger the ring represents, not just to him or his city, but to all of Middle-earth. So his refusal of the ring, it's not just about being morally better. It's a profound statement about leadership, especially in wartime. In a world where everyone craves power, his wisdom is in rejecting it, recognizing that real strength isn't wielding that kind of influence, it's restraint, knowing what not to touch. He gets it. The ring can't be used against Sauron because it is Sauron, essentially. It's his tool. That decision, it doesn't just save Frodo and Sam, it challenges our idea of what a hero is. Sometimes the greatest heroism is knowing when not to act, when to step back from that edge of absolute power. It's a crucial moral turning point. It sets Gondor's approach apart from the ring's corruption and ultimately from the darkness they're fighting. So he lets Frodo and Sam go, puts the world's fate on their small shoulders, instead of grabbing for that false strength himself.
Okay, let's switch gears now. Think about the other members of the Fellowship, the ones who got separated, operating in a very different part of this growing war. While Frodo and Sam are on that slow, psychological trek to Mordor, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, they're in this relentless physical chase. They're tracking the Uruk-hai, those monsters who grabbed Merry and Pippin back at the end of Fellowship. It's desperate, grueling. Across huge distances, plains, rivers, rocky bits, just filled with this tension, hoping against hope they can save their friends. You really see their loyalty, their sheer endurance. Covering insane distances on foot, it's incredible. And along the way, their chase leads them to this grim scene, the aftermath of a battle. They find the burnt bodies of the Uruk-hai, but crucially, no hobbits. The suspense there is just, wow, are they alive? Did they get away? The relief when it finally comes is huge. We find out later that Merry and Pippin, through sheer hobbit grit, maybe some luck, they escaped into Fangorn Forest, that mysterious ancient forest. And then, in a moment that just electrifies the whole film, changes everything. Deep in that forest, they meet Gandalf again.
But like you said, not just Gandalf. Gandalf the White. Okay, let's unpack this, because Gandalf's return isn't just, oh, hey, he's back. It's a massive shift. In power, in guidance, a real beacon of hope when things looked bleakest.
Oh, absolutely. His return is pure hope. And strategically, it's a masterstroke in the story. He's not just back, he's transformed, reborn, really. Gandalf the White. He returned from what looked like certain death fighting, that Balrog, remember? That fiery demon thing in Moria. And this change isn't just his robes, it means a whole new level of power, clarity, purpose. The sources say he's stronger than before, like purified, empowered, almost angelic, a true light in a darkening world. And he immediately takes charge, gives Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli that direction they desperately needed, that sense of purpose again. He brings not just guidance, but real strategic insight. And this spiritual strength that was gone when he fell. It signals a totally new phase in the fight against Sauron and Saruman. The good guys get this powerful guiding hand right when they need it most. And he doesn't waste time. He immediately leads them towards Rohan, saying they're desperately needed there. He already knows how bad things are.
And Rohan is definitely in trouble. Big trouble. It's like it's under siege in two ways at once, spiritually and, well, literally. On the spiritual side, you've got King Theoden, the ruler of Rohan, once noble but now old and weakened. He's been poisoned, basically, by his advisor, Grima Wormtongue, And Wormtongue isn't just some slimy politician. He's secretly working for Saruman, the evil wizard, filling the king's mind with despair, doubt, making him weak, unable to act, blind to the danger closing in. It's like a rot from the inside, a psychological siege paralyzing the kingdom's leadership. You see it in how Theoden looks slumped, voice raspy, eyes vacant. And then, the literal siege. Saruman isn't just whispering in ears, he's sending out his army. Those monstrous Uruk-hai, bred for war, relentless, brutal, they're just tearing across Rohan, burning villages, killing people, destroying everything. It's a full-on invasion. A brutal show of Saruman's growing power, his contempt for life, and his industrial-scale destruction of nature for his war effort. The images of burning homes, fleeing people, it paints a really grim picture of the physical threat.
Which raises that critical question again. What does it take for a leader to break free from that kind of insidious influence? To find their will again, especially when the manipulation is so deep it affects their very being. Gandalf's intervention here, it's almost like a miracle, shows his new power, he confronts Wormtongue head-on, exposes his lies, and then, using his immense power, his wisdom, it's like an exorcism, he frees King Theoden from Wormtongue's grip. And it's not just mental, you see Theoden physically recover. His strength returns, his mind clears, his nobility shines through again. He literally stands tall again. Eyes clear, voice strong. Kingly! And once he's free, the king sees the reality. War isn't coming, it's here. It's devastating. He makes that tough call. But the right one? Evacuate the people to Helm's Deep, that ancient fortress, the last real hope, where they can try to make a stand, even against terrible odds. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, they arrive with Gandalf. They join the defense, ready to fight for Rohan. It's this huge moment. Hope restored, leadership back. It shows even a kingdom on its knees can find the strength to fight back when its true king steps up.
Okay, let's swing back to Merry and Pippin for a second. They had quite the adventure after escaping those Uruks, didn't they? Bit of luck, bit of hobbit cleverness, and they end up deep inside Fangorn Forest, this ancient, misty, mysterious place where the trees themselves seem alive. And it's here they have maybe one of the most unexpected encounters in the whole story. Utterly pivotal, too. They meet Treebeard, an Ent. Think of it like nature itself, but with a voice. A very, very slow, very deliberate, very old voice. These are the oldest living things in Middle-earth, ancient, wise, tree-like beings. They literally hold the memory of the forest. Their meeting is just this wonderful mix of hobbit curiosity meeting ancient, slow majesty.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating is where the Ents start, mentally, and where they end up. They are, by nature, incredibly slow. They operate on, like, a geological clock. Their thoughts take ages, decisions take days, weeks even. And at first, they absolutely refuse to get involved in the war. It's not their problem, they think. It's a fight between men, elves, wizards, not trees. They're rooted in neutrality. Their whole pace of existence is so deliberate. The idea of fast, violent war is just alien to them. Ancient wisdom says stay out of it, but Merry and Pippin, they become these accidental catalysts for this huge, earth-shaking change. They manage to show Treebeard firsthand the devastation Saruman has caused to the forest right next to Isengard. The trees, their own kind, just ripped down, chopped up, fed into Saruman's war machines. It's a really powerful visual, isn't it? A statement about unchecked industry destroying nature. That destruction, that attack on their very being finally pushes them over the edge. It galvanizes these beings who always stood apart. This ecological horror becomes the tipping point, forces the Ents to abandon millennia of neutrality.
And when they do decide to act, wow, it is absolutely spectacular. A true force of nature unleashed. The Ents rise up in anger. That ancient, slow-burning fury finally ignites. And they start this thunderous march towards Isengard, Saruman's fortress. The ground literally shakes. It's one of the most surprising, most impactful moments in the whole story. Nature striking back against destructive industry. And the attack itself is just, climactic is the word. These giant tree shepherds, the spirit of the forest made manifest. They launch this massive assault, break down the fortress walls, overwhelm Saruman's defenses, and then they flood the whole place. Divert a river, just wash away his works. They literally dismantle his war machine, neutralize his base, trap him in his tower. So what does that mean for the bigger war? It means even the oldest, slowest, most detached forces can be pushed into action. They can become a decisive factor when their world, their existence is threatened. It's nature's fury. An unstoppable ancient power, and it's incredibly effective. Shows that Saruman and Sauron underestimated the quiet defenders of Middle-earth.
Absolutely. It fundamentally changes the whole strategic situation. Saruman's power is massively reduced, his war machine is crippled, so the immediate threat shifts. The focus now goes entirely to that desperate fight at Helm's Deep. That fortress becomes the literal and symbolic line in the sand for the free people.
Now, yes, we get to it. Probably the film's most epic sequence. Visually stunning, emotionally draining. The Battle of Helm's Deep. The setting is this ancient fortress, right? A narrow valley in the mountains, natural defenses, plus this huge wall, the Deeping Wall. And here, the forces of Rohan, battered, outnumbered, basically refugees, they prepare for this desperate last stand. The sources really stress how dire it is. The defenders include old men and young boys, which just hits you how desperate they are, facing them. Saruman's army, 10,000 Uruk-hai, relentless, brutal fighting machines bred for one purpose, destruction, marching with this terrifying efficiency.
And a really key part of this battle, connecting it to the bigger themes, is the alliance it creates. An unlikely one. As the Uruk-hai are pressing in, looking like they're about to just overwhelm everyone, elves arrive. From Lothlorien, led by Haldir. Unexpectedly joining the defense, this is incredibly rare, significant. A moment in Middle-earth history where elves and men fight side by side like this. Ancient grudges, old divisions, set aside because the threat is just that huge, that existential. It's a powerful symbol of unity against a common enemy. And that glimmer of hope, that unexpected reinforcement, it's a massive psychological boost. A symbol of maybe a united front against Sauron, even just for this one terrible night. It shows some threats are so big they force even ancient rivals to stand together.
And terrible is the right word. That siege is long, relentless, utterly savage, lasts all night. You can almost feel the tension, the sheer raw desperation of their fight against these impossible odds. The Uruk-hai just keep coming, wave after wave, using siege ladders, explosives. That moment the Deeping Wall blows up, it's just shocking. They use sheer numbers to just hammer the fortress. You see the defenders push to their absolute limit, physically, mentally, fighting for every single inch. The walls are breached, casualties are mounting. That feeling of defeat, crushing defeat, becomes almost real. It's just brilliant filmmaking, building suspense, showing the horrifying cost of war. You see the defenders fighting with this raw courage, knowing that losing means annihilation for everyone, their whole people. Hope just seems to be draining away minute by minute in that dark, rainy night.
Which brings us back to that question, doesn't it? How much does hope depend on help from outside versus just? The grit, the resilience of the people fighting. And in that darkest hour, when defeat looks certain, inevitable, you get that classic moment, the cavalry arriving just in time. But done so incredibly well here. Gandalf appears at dawn, silhouetted on the ridge against the sunrise. And he's not alone. He's with Omer and thousands of Rohirrim riders. Rallied, returned, their charge down the slope into the surprised Uruk-hai ranks. It's just visceral, awe-inspiring, a wave of light and steel crashing into the enemy, completely routing them. It's pure catharsis, a stunning turnaround. The salvation of Rohan. And while, yes, it definitely highlights the power of that timely intervention, it also speaks volumes about the perseverance of those inside Helm's Deep, who held out all night against unimaginable odds. Their resilience, their courage to face doom, that's what bought the time for Gandalf and Éomer to arrive. It shows you need both, really, internal strength and external help, working together against that kind of evil. Proof that even when all seems lost, just continuing the fight can create the space for hope to break through.
And so, yeah, as the film wraps up, we see this huge strategic win. Saruman's power at Isengard is broken. His immediate threat, gone. Armies scattered or destroyed, his fortress useless. It's a massive victory, a critical blow against one of the main bad guys threatening the West. But it's also kind of unsettling, a stark reminder that the biggest fight is still to come. The real threat. Sauron himself, the Dark Lord. He looms even larger now. The stakes just keep escalating for Middle-earth. Neutralizing one threat just reveals the bigger one more clearly. His eye is now fixed on the final goal. That victory at Helm's Deep feels amazing, but also kind of temporary in the shadow of what's next.
And what's really fascinating is how the film keeps weaving that intimate psychological struggle right alongside the big battles. Despite Saruman's defeat, despite Helm's Deep, Frodo and Sam's journey continues. And it's getting harder. You see Frodo's will visibly weakening under the ring's influence. The mental toll, the emotional cost of carrying that thing, it's becoming really clear. His paranoia, his despair, his exhaustion. And even after Frodo showed him mercy, Gollum is secretly plotting to betray him, ominously promising to lead him to her. Which is, a chilling setup for Shelob, that terrifying giant spider guarding the pass into Mordor. It really highlights how even a noble act, like mercy, can lead to more danger. Unforeseen peril. It shows the danger Frodo faces isn't just the ring. It's from those corrupted by it, like Gollum, and even the landscape itself, like Shelob. That growing internal conflict in Frodo, plus the double threat of Gollum and the unseen Shelob. It really drives home the idea that the biggest battles aren't always fought with swords. Often, they're fought inside the mind, the spirit of one small, overburdened person.
Exactly. And that brings us nicely to the key themes and just the overall feel of The Two Towers, which really makes it stand out from Fellowship, makes it such a pivotal film. It's definitely darker, way more war-driven than the first film. Middle-earth is plunged into full-scale war now. Multiple huge battles, Helm's Deep, the Ents attacking Isengard, the destruction in Rohan,
They take center stage. The Shire feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it digs deep into the consequences of temptation. Not just Frodo's internal fight with the ring, where his empathy for Gollum is constantly battling his own weakening resolve, but also that brilliant contrast between Faramir successfully resisting the ring's pull, showing that nobility, and his brother Boromir's tragic failure earlier. That comparison gives you so much insight into character, moral strength, and different ways to be heroic when faced with ultimate power. It suggests the strongest choice might be choosing not to use power.
And the power of friendship. That's another huge theme running through, kind of balancing the darkness. You see it most clearly, maybe, with Sam's absolute loyalty to Frodo. He's his constant source of hope, common sense, and just steadfast love on their awful journey. But you also see it develop in that amazing, unlikely bond between Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. They start as representatives of races with old grudges, right? Elf, dwarf, man. But they forge this unbreakable friendship through shared danger, shared purpose. Their banter, their respect for each other, it becomes a real heart of the film.
And then, of course, the cost of war. You feel it constantly. Through the devastation you see in Rohan. Through the desperate, bloody fight at Helm's Deep, where every life matters, every inch is bought with blood. And even with the Ents being forced into it, how war drags even ancient neutral powers in because of the sheer scale of destruction, the violation of their world. The film really doesn't pull punches, showing the grim side of battle and what it does to people and the land.
Yeah, overall, The Two Towers just brilliantly expands the scope. It weaves together all these separate stories happening at the same time. Frodo and Sam's painful quest, Aragorn and company fighting for Rohan, Merry and Pippin playing the surprising role with the Ents. Each storyline is distinct, geographically separate, but they all move forward together, building tension, deepening the characters, and all leading towards that final epic confrontation in The Return of the King. It's just masterful storytelling, complex narrative done right.
Exactly. And if you connect it to the big picture, The Two Towers isn't just a middle part. It's not just bridging two films. It's where the true scale of the conflict, both the external war across Middle-earth and the internal struggles within the characters, really solidifies, really intensifies. It sets the stage perfectly for the final act by showing you the immense pressure, the profound choices people have to make, the desperate actions needed to fight back against this shadow that seems like it could swallow everything. It explores courage in so many forms. On the battlefield, sure, but also in that quiet, internal struggle of the spirit.
Wow. What an incredible, detailed journey that was, back through the Two Towers. We've covered so much. From Frodo and Gollum's intense personal torments, the restoration of Théoden's will against that slimy corruption, the amazing ancient fury of the Ents, all the way to that epic, desperate fight for survival at Helm's Deep. This film is it's a cinematic achievement. It blends individual heroism, massive warfare, and these deep moral choices so perfectly. It really defines what it means to stand up against impossible odds and what's truly worth fighting for.
So what does this all mean for you? As we've seen so clearly in The Two Towers, right? Even when you're facing overwhelming odds, seemingly unbeatable evil, those moments of profound choice, maybe an act of mercy to someone wretched, a leader finding their strength again, an unexpected alliance on a battlefield, those moments can change everything. They can turn the tide. The film really makes you think, doesn't it? What's the real weight of one person's choice? Or maybe a small group's choices? Especially when the fate of a whole world is hanging in the balance. It's kind of a reminder that even in the absolute darkest times, hope can pop up from the most unexpected places.
That is a really powerful thought to end on. We definitely encourage you to think about the different faces of leadership in a crisis, the sheer power of making a choice, and all the different ways courage shows up when conflict escalates and threatens everything. Until next time, keep exploring the depths of knowledge.